Hi, I'm Nate Speare. I'm a practicing astrologer, and I'm here to offer you a forecast for the week based on the supermoon that we've been experiencing today. It's a full moon in Taurus, and it's incredibly bright and vivid, and it's been also very strong emotionally. We can feel in the air that there's a sense of close to the moon and the sun. There are a couple of asteroids that really represent and hold and trigger goddess energies in the collective psyche, particularly conjunct the sun. So right up holding the sun's hand, we have Lilith, Black Moon Lilith. And conjunct the moon, right up holding the moon's hand in Taurus, we have Sedna. And so with Lilith and Sedna, we have a very strong sense that these are, it's a bit subtle and complicated because these are goddess energies that might have been originally said to be receptive because of the feminine nature, receptive and sensual and attuned to intuition and feelings and the natural world. But in both of these cases, the myths surrounding both Lilith and Sedna involve expulsion and rejection. So there's a sense of our collective femininity, our collective goddess sense of ourselves and as a human race being neglected, cast away, pushed out, and now experiencing a resurgence and coming back to the surface, bubbling back and getting ready to rise back up and have a backlash against its oppressors. So in other words, the goddess energies are angry, and this includes also Pallas Athena, one of the other asteroids. What's happening is between the sun, and then we said Lilith is up visiting, holding the sun's hand, and then the moon and Sedna holding the moon's hand are both forming loose squares to Pallas Athena, who is Athena in Greek mythology, the goddess of justice and wisdom, who came out of Zeus's head, right? So each of these are very particularly powerful goddess figures, with Lilith and Sedna being this kind of really extremely intense energy on the sensual level, and also on the level of the oceanic experience and flood of emotions and feeling. And then we have the experience of Pallas Athena making this kind of tense, vigorous, challenging aspect to those bodies of justice and wanting prudence and craftsmanship. So we might be feeling this week a mixture of, if there are parts of ourselves that have been banished or cast away, we may be feeling very potently and palpably that we feel the instinct to rise up and lash back. And also, the converse to that, if we have been shooting down or ignoring or neglecting or even bullying people of a more receptive energy, if we've been not appreciating that enough, then we can expect a very strong backlash from those people. And this kind of resurgence of our, you could say, collectively as a human race, goddess energies could feel itself on a surprising level this week, because when you have that kind of collective experience of abandonment going on in the consciousness, it's often not really expected that we can easily rise back up and have the reserves to stand up for ourselves, to stand up for what we value and believe in, and to fight back against our oppressors. And also, sort of in the same breath, this is a very daunting and demanding task, to realize our oneness and our complete interdependence with those same beings. It's a very tall order, but that's part of what these goddess energies seem to do. We are bound to be feeling the surprise of this, that we are not expecting this, but that we're actually surprised, that we have the emotional and energetic reserves to both rise up, fight back, stand up for what we believe in, and also to realize a greater level of empathy and compassion with each other. But what's going to wake us up first this week is probably likely going to be a mixture of anger and resentment and this kind of like bubbling vital energy ready to go up and go toward the next action as a kind of resurgence or backlash. So this isn't to be feared. It's just to really be acknowledged. The currents of the current of human vulnerability, which includes the cries, you know, the millions of cries of all of the people who have been oppressed or unheard on so many different levels, politically, personally, socially, in all different cultures. In the currents of vulnerability that are including those cries of despair and of a need for different values to be heard are actually, because they're so vulnerable, maybe not completely aware of the power that they hold, because they feel like they've been stuffed down. But in fact, they hold a great deal of power. And in fact, they're getting larger and larger in their energy and presence, which means that they are readying themselves, even unknowingly or unconsciously, to swallow the oppressiveness of voices that have held them back or shut them down. Meaning that the tide of our emotions is likely going to again surprise us with its reserves to rise up and vouch for us and stand up for us. So this is actually a vote of confidence in the human race, and we should trust in the different kinds of currents this week, even if we feel at certain times like we're in a nightmare. It's like the Tibetan Buddhists say, sometimes when you're seeing certain things that scare you, especially when you see things that scare you, or especially when you see things that symbolize or that represent anger or a sense of torture or persecution, these are the wrathful deities, right? So we experience the surprising resurgence of our energetic reserves to stand up for our values, to stand up for what we believe in. And in effect, we give the human race a certain quality of wrathful compassion, because in the same breath we are confronting and we are being able to hold a space for empathy and a sense of reminding ourselves and each other of our true, that we're really linked up and interdependent with each other. So there's a sense of wrath, anger. The goddesses are pissed off and upset, and which includes the environment, of course. And there's a sense of compassion and space and relief at the same time. So we might experience this week as going, and then once it comes to a head, space, relief, release. On a concrete and pragmatic level, also, we may see in the news articles or pictures, images regarding the ocean, particularly bodies of water. The tropical storms may come up, and also articles about oppressed women, particularly, may come strongly to the surface this week. As well as female figures and the justice system. So all these different kinds of struggles and also opportunities for relief and release confronting us this week. And this is really bringing us towards, we can really look to this over the course of the week with an eye on what in our lives are we evaluating. Do the foundations that we're building off of provide enough space for the different parts of ourselves to be heard? Even the more receptive, especially the more receptive parts of ourselves that need a lot of space, for sometimes indecision, indecisiveness, sometimes for knowing when to say no to the pressures of society. Because Sedna, when you look at the asteroid Sedna, which is conjunct the moon tonight, over the past day in Taurus, we have Sedna was actually cast off of a boat in one version of the story by her suitors, a group of gentlemen who were insecure because she wasn't attracted to them. In another version of the story, by her own father, who cut off her hands and threw her out into the water. And when Sedna was thrown into the ocean, all of the sharks and sea creatures pulled her down, and she actually became Sedna, goddess of the sea. And the legend, the myth of Sedna is that when we are cruel to our environment, Sedna becomes angry. And it is up to those of us who are sensitive to listen to her, because if we don't learn to listen to her and care for her, meaning our environment, and also any rejected part of our receptive nature that needs space to reflect on different kinds of decisions, and that needs space that includes saying no to the pressures of society. Because if we don't listen to Sedna, then she shows her anger by creating things like famine, storms, and environmental or natural disasters or wake-up calls. So we're going to see much of that test and challenge this week, because ultimately it's going to be leading up to next week a transformation of our foundations, or a transformation of what we're taking on, and a sort of clear, big evaluation of what we're taking on. So that's this week. And if you have questions, comments, or you'd like to share your experience, or specific questions about how these energies are working on your birth chart in your life situation, I'm very happy to speak to them, and please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I wish everyone a week of much success and some tenderness amidst all these turbulent energies. Thank you.